great nation would present. He possessed much learning, and his training as a member of Pharaoh's household had doubtless given him dignity, confidence, and poise, and had accentuated his ability to organize and command. But the lowly occupation of shepherding in Midian provided the training needed to develop fine qualities that would be even more important for the task ahead of him. Similarly, David underwent rigorous training, even after being anointed by Samuel, and Jesus Christ was tried, tested, and proved to be perfected as king and high priest forever. Yet Christ learned obedience from the things he suffered. And after he has been made perfect, he became responsible for everlasting salvation to all those obeying him. Heb 5. 8, 9. His appointment as deliverer. Toward the end of his 40-year sojourn in Midian, Moses was shepherding Jethro's flock near Mount Horeb when he was amazed to see a thorn bush flaming with fire but not consumed. As he approached to inspect this great phenomenon, Jehovah's angel spoke out of the flame, revealing that it was now time for God to deliver Israel out of bondage and commissioning Moses to go in his memorial named Jehovah. Acts 3. 1-15. Thus God appointed Moses as his prophet and representative, and Moses could now correctly be called an anointed one, or Messiah, or the Christ, as at Hebrews 11. 26. Jehovah, through the angel, provided credentials that Moses could present to the older men of Israel. These were in the form of 3 miracles as signs. Here, for the first time in the scriptures, we read of a human empowered to perform miracles. Acts 4. 1-9. Moses not disqualified because of diffidence. But Moses showed diffidence, arguing that he was unable to speak fluently. Here was a changed Moses, quite different from the one who had, of his own accord, offered himself as Israel's deliverer 40 years earlier. He continued to remonstrate with Jehovah, finally asking Jehovah to excuse him from the task. Although this aroused God's anger, he did not reject Moses, but provided Moses' brother Aaron as a mouthpiece. Thus, as Moses was representative for God, so Moses became as God to Aaron, who spoke representatively for him. In the ensuing meeting with the older men of Israel and the encounters with Pharaoh, it appears that God gave Moses the instructions and commands, and Moses, in turn, relayed them to Aaron. O textoi acute miritra longo. Moses 436. Surface of the ground. New 12. 3. As a meek person, he recognized that he was a mere human, with imperfections and weaknesses. He did not push himself forward as Israel's invincible leader. He expressed, not fear of Pharaoh, but an acute awareness of his own limitations. Before Pharaoh of Egypt, Moses and Aaron were now key figures in a battle of the gods. In the persons of the magic-practicing priests, the chiefs of whom were apparently named Jan and Jambus 2-3. 8. Pharaoh summoned the power of all the gods of Egypt against the power of Jehovah. The first miracle that Aaron performed before Pharaoh at Moses' direction proved Jehovah's supremacy over the gods of Egypt, even though Pharaoh became more obstinate. Acts 7. 8-13. Later, when the third plague occurred, even the priests were forced to admit, it is the finger of God. And they were so severely stricken by the plague of boils that they were altogether unable even to appear before Pharaoh to oppose Moses during that plague. Acts 8. 16-19. 9. 10-12. Plagues do softening and hardening work. Moses and Aaron became the announcers of each of the 10 plagues. The plagues came as announced, proving Moses' commission as Jehovah's representative. Jehovah's name was declared and much talked about in Egypt, accomplishing both a softening and a hardening toward that name. Softening the Israelites and some of the Egyptians. Hardening Pharaoh and his advisors and supporters. Acts 9. 16. 11. 10. 12. 29-39. Instead of believing that they had offended their gods, the Egyptians knew that it was Jehovah who was judging their gods. By the time 9 plagues had been executed, Moses too had become very great in the land of Egypt, in the eyes of Pharaoh's servants and in the eyes of the people. Acts 11. 3. There was a marked change in the men of Israel also. They had at first accepted Moses' credentials, but after experiencing harder working conditions at the order of Pharaoh, they complained against him to the point that Moses in discouragement appealed to Jehovah. Acts 4. 29-31. 5. 19-23 The Most High at that time strengthened him by revealing that he was now going to fulfill that for which Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had looked, namely, the full revealing of the meaning of his name Jehovah and delivering Israel and establishing it as a great nation in the land of promise. Acts 6. 1-8 Even then the men of Israel did not listen to Moses. But now, after the 9th plague, they were solidly behind him, cooperating so that, after the 10th plague, he could organize them and lead them out in an orderly way, in battle formation. Acts 13. 18. Courage and faith required to face Pharaoh. It was only in the strength of Jehovah and due to the operation of his Spirit upon them that Moses and Aaron proved equal to the task set before them. Picture the court of Pharaoh, the king of the undisputed world power of that time. Here was unparalleled splendor, the haughty Pharaoh, supposed to be a god himself, surrounded by his advisors, military commanders, guards, and slaves. Moreover, there were the religious leaders,